I'd like to just tell you a little bit about what's going to happen next. The Northwest Paper Company of Cloquet was founded by the Weyerhaeuser brothers on the banks of the St. Louis River in 1898. In 1964, this company was bought by the Potlatch Corporation of Northwestern Natives. Potlatch is the name for their gift-giving ritual that pretty much makes up their economy. So the natives in that area were buying up forest land, and they bought that company. So by 1977, our speaker was working there in various management positions and continued to work there for a quarter century, as the company was eventually sold to Sappi so that Potlatch could reinvent itself as a real estate investment trust. Sappi, however, the South American Pulp and Paper Industries, is an international corporation with more than 12,000 employees. Uses a triple bottom line of prosperity, planet, and people to measure its success. Last year, it generated $625 million of operating profit on only $2 million of debt. So it's a well-run company now operating the mill in Cloquet. Besides his degree in chemical engineering, our speaker holds a Master of Science in Paper Chemistry from the Institute of Paper Chemistry, which was founded in 1929 in Appleton, Wisconsin, just down the street there. It's now part of the world-famous Georgia Institute of Technology, and Vinod is still a member of the Technical Association of Pulp and Paper Industry, TAPI, founded in 1915, and consisting of more than 7,000 chemists and engineers in paper, bioenergy, and nanotechnology industries. He retired from Sappi as the manager of pulping research. In case that sounds a little esoteric, consider that the capacity of the Cloquet mill today is 330,000 metric tons of paper and 330,000 metric tons of a new product called dissolving wood pulp. Without pulping research, there wouldn't be dissolving wood pulp, and almost certainly there wouldn't be a mill operating in Cloquet right next door to us. Our speaker also holds a master's degree in management from Thomas College in Waterville, Maine, and has 11 years experience as a certified financial planner for UBS and 7 at Ameriprise. He has 2 children. He lives in Hermantown, where he can be seen swing dancing, gardening, cross-country skiing, visiting every national park known to man, volunteering to clean up highways, hiking trails throughout Minnesota and America and around the world. And he shares with our last speaker, Professor David Swenson, the middle initial X. Perhaps he'll tell us about that. Please give a warm welcome to my friend, Vinod Gupta.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure for me to be here and share my experience of my hike to Everest Base Camp. Now, some of you may not know that I'm a student of health, wealth, and happiness. And they're all interconnected, and exercise is a big part of health, wealth, and happiness. Now, doing exercise for the sake of it is hard. But when you have a goal in mind, then exercise becomes a little less difficult. 12 years ago, when I moved to Minnesota from Michigan, in Michigan, I had a job where I was working 11, 12 hours, with calls at night, had no time to do exercise. So when I moved to Hermantown, first summer I decided I think I should go for a walk. I went for a walk, 1/3 of a mile, and I thought, man, I'm going to die. This is too much. 2 years from that, I was reading a book, and some of you are pretty knowledgeable people might have read it. It was Celestine Prophecy by James Ledfield. And in that book, James talked about that people, in this book, I know it's a fiction, but you believe whatever you want to, and I believed in it, what he was saying, that if you go there, you can see the aura in people. Now, we all know that you have paintings and all the saints and holy people have auras, but you and I don't. So I thought, wouldn't that be a cool experience if I can see the aura in ordinary people? I know it exists. Well, it's a hard hike. There are thousands of steps. And I trained for it, went for a hike, completed it successfully, didn't see a thing. So the peak, see, it goes up and then goes down. The peak with my traveling partner is about 13,600. Before that, the highest point I hiked was Grand Tetons. It was 9,900. And then I drove to Alpine in Rocky Mountain National Park, which is about 12,500. But I drove there, I didn't hike. So once I completed that, I was talking to someone. He said, you know, you train, you work, you're fit. Why don't you go to Annapurna in Nepal, which is about the same height? You start a lot lower, but you finish at the same height. So I went to Annapurna, and it was a wonderful experience. To the extent there were parts of Annapurna where all of a sudden you really feel light on your feet, you feel good. I could feel the energy in those forests. You truly could. Coming back from Annapurna, you know, all hikers are pretty much the same. They like to brag. We were sitting there having lunch, and I was talking to this couple, and they said to me, he said, you know something? I think you like hiking to Everest Base Camp. And I said, man, at my age, Everest Base Camp? No, I'm not going to do that. And guess what happened to me? There was a little voice in my head saying, Vinod, you got to do it. If you don't do it, you're going to be sorry when you die that you had the opportunity to do it. It won't go away. For a few months, it just won't go away. Only time it went away was when I put the money down for that trip. Okay. After that, I never heard from it. Now, interesting thing is, my traveling partner told me that she wasn't going with me. She had enough of my hiking. I advertised in the paper, see if anybody wanted to go with me. No takers. So I went from US by myself. And these are a couple of shots of Annapurna. I'm taking a picture at Annapurna. And this is my training. This is Spirit Mountain, in case you haven't noticed that. And for training for Everest Base Camp, I went up and down, and by the time I finished my training, I did it 3.5 times. And some of you may not know, from the chalet on Grant Street to the top of the lift is 700 feet. So if you do it 3.5 times, that means you're doing more than 2,000 feet up and down. Okay, so I took a selfie, you can tell. So here are some stats for Everest Base Camp. Population of Nepal is 18 million. Kathmandu is about 1.5. Elevation of Kathmandu is around 4,000. You know, when you are on a hill, depends where you measure it at. And temperature in October, which was last year I went in October, it is about 57 to 67. This is in Kathmandu, not at the base camp. And then, just for information, temperature drop per 1,000 feet is about 3 to 5 inches per minute. Now, here's the group. There were 5 people from Australia, 1 from New Zealand, and then me. And Amy, who was from Australia, I think something happened there. See if you can show it now. No. Anyway, Amy was 24 years old, Justin 26, Ryle was from Australia 26, Pauline also 26, Andy, he was from New Zealand, was 50 years old. And then there's another person's name, I don't know what happened to the slide, Roscoe, he was 60 years old. Then I was 70, I was the oldest person in the group. Now how do you get there from here? You go to Duluth, to Minneapolis, to Amsterdam, to Delhi, and then you take a siesta in Delhi for 8 hours. Because most of these flights from Europe to Delhi, they arrive there around 11, 12 p.m. at night. And Kathmandu is shut down at night. The first flight to Kathmandu is 7 a.m. And then you just sit there and then take the flight to Kathmandu. The next day you fly from Kathmandu to Lukla. It's a 40-minute flight. Okay? And the hiking starts from Lukla. Here's the map. Okay? start at Lukla, then, by the way, this is the elevation in meters. Then you go to Phakding, and then you go to Namche Bazaar. And what you do at Namche Bazaar is, next day, you go up for about 1600 feet, and then you come down. So you spend 2 nights in Namche Bazaar. And then you go to Tengboche and Dingboche. You do the same thing at Dingboche. You go up about 1600 feet, you come back down and sleep. So you have 2 nights in Dingboche. And from Dingboche, you go to Lobuche, Gorakshap. Now, at Gorakshap, you arrive there about noontime, and you hike to Everest Base Camp. Then you come back to Gorakshap, and next day, 4 o'clock in the morning, okay, with flashlights and headlamps, you go to Kalapathar. Kalapathar is even higher than base camp by about 600 feet. So going up takes about 8 days, and coming down only 3 days. So here's the schedule. You start at Kathmandu, which is 44:28. Flight takes 20 minutes to Lukla. Lukla is about 9,000 feet. From Lukla, you go to Phakding. Actually, you think you're climbing up, but actually Phakding is lower than Lukla. The next day, from Lukla, you go to Namche Bazaar, which is about 11,000, so that's how much. It takes about 7 hours. And at Namche Bazaar, you go to Everest View Hotel. There's a hotel. You go up there, it's about 1,500 feet, then you come down back to Namche Bazaar. From Namche Bazaar, you go to Tengboche. It takes about 7 hours. The height is given. And from Tengboche, you go to Dingboche, which is about 14,000. Okay. Now in Dingboche, you go up and you come down, you spend 2 days. And the local peak is at 15,000. So every time you're going up, but at 2 nights, you're going up and coming back down. And from Lobuche, you go to Gorakshap. Get there about noontime, have lunch, and then go to Everest Base Camp, come back to Gorakshap, sleep there, and next morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, you go to Kalapathar. Now, Kalapathar is a tough hike. There are a lot of things going on. First, it's at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're half asleep. You got a headlamp. It's pretty stressful, 4 o'clock in the morning. You can't see anything. And you don't know where you're going because headlamp can only do so much. But when you get there, it's first light in the morning. And those mountains are just gorgeous in low light. That's why you start early in the morning. Because when you take a picture at low light, it's just gorgeous. And then you come back and then head down. Okay. This is a picture of me at Everest Base Camp, which is about 17,600. Most of the signs in Nepal are in meters. Here is another map. Now, you meet a lot of people through Namche Bazaar, which is right here. Now, we went this way to Everest Base Camp and next day to Kalapathar. A lot of people go this height and some people go to this height. So you meet a lot of people here, but everybody is going to Everest Base Camp. So getting back home. So Gorakshap to Tengboche is about 7.5 hours, to Namche Bazaar another 7 hours, and the Lukla another 8 hours. So it took us 8 days to go up and 3 days to come down from Kalapathar. And total is about 95 miles. Now, thin air does weird things to people, and it's not the same. Okay? We were 7 in our group, and everybody had a different, you can call it condition or ailment. It's truly not an ailment. Okay? Poor sleep, thin air and cold. Okay? But you can't sleep very well. Number one. Number two, at my age, and some of you are, I think, about my age, you know how sleep is. You can't sleep very well. Third is that there is no light. Once it's dark, you're done. And it's cold, the rooms aren't heated. So if you're in your room, you've got to be in your sleeping bag because there's no way you can do anything in your room because there's no light. So you got about 10, 11 hours of dark, and if you're sleeping only 6, 7 hours, you can't sleep. Vomiting is a big issue. Okay? Constipation, because if you're dehydrated, which at high elevation happens, you get constipated. Some people, instead of getting constipated, they have diarrhea. A couple of people in our group did do that. Upset stomach, you get a very queasy stomach. Frequent queening, cold and elevation, the body tends to reject water. Farting, because of the low pressure, initial first couple of days, that happens. And since you can sleep very good, guess what? Human nature is such that when you dream, you always dream bad dreams. Okay? So you have vivid dreams. And the worst of them all is altitude sickness. And if you get altitude sickness, what they advise is instead of going up, you go down. And if you're really bad, this is what happens. They call a helicopter, and they put you in a helicopter to Kathmandu. And you cannot go on a hike to Everest Base Camp without insurance, because you don't know whether you're going to get the altitude sickness or not. If you do, then they want to make sure there is somebody to cover the ride of helicopter, which costs about $500. It's only a 40-minute ride. As long as I'm showing you this, there are only 3 modes of transportation to, let's say, Gorakshap. One is helicopter. Second is whatever you need to carry on your back. Okay, the Sherpas do that, and it's a trade. There are a lot of people, and I'll show you some pictures, where they carry stuff on their back. And the third one is mules or yaks. Mules at lower level, but they don't survive at higher levels. Okay? And yaks at the higher level. This is the kind of food you get when you are doing Everest Base Camp. You get cereal and milk. You get egg spread on a flatbread. They have a flatbread and they make egg and they spread it on it. Noodles with and without eggs. Sherpa stew, which is essentially potatoes. Okay. And then you get a dal bhat. Dal bhat is a typical Nepali dish. It is lentils, potatoes, carrots, flatbread, all rice. Okay. You can get a lot of tea and coffee, mostly tea. The Nepalese don't drink a lot of coffee. A lot of bottled water. I'll give you an example. Bottled water, if you buy half a liter bottled water in Kathmandu, costs you 20 cents. At Gorakshap, it costs you $3.50 because it has to be carried on the back of people. And then beer and liquor at low levels. High levels, you can find beer and liquor. But low levels, you can find all kinds of beer and liquor. Now this is interesting. Even at those high levels, you can find Wi-Fi. You have to pay for it by the hour, which is generally $3.50 per hour, but at least you have it. Okay? No heat in the rooms, toilets are available, but you have to take a bucket from a drum of water to flush it. And guess what? Where does that go? That goes into the river, because there's no treatment facilities. Okay? I was on the hike for 11 days, didn't take a shower for 11 days. Now, only good part of that is I didn't need one because you're climbing up, it's cold, you don't sweat. Electricity is available because they have solar panels, but they want to conserve it for the dining room. So they don't allow you, the wattage may be 0 watts, a bulb in your room, and after dark, they turn that off. So there's no electricity, practically. Now here's a picture of a river called Duluth, because it's coming from a glacier. And as if you have gone to Alaska, you know that as the glacier moves, it grinds the rocks around the glacier. And the water of the river looks like milk. So they call it Milky River. Now, this was our first stop for lunch, and you can see that's how the streets look. There's no paved roads. This is the best street. There's a mule, and they're all waiting to be loaded. A whole bunch of people like us with their backpacks. Okay, so now, interesting thing you might have noticed, the signs are in English. Okay, the Everest Green restaurant on the top is in English, that bar, so the signs are in English, which makes it easier if you're an English-speaking person. A lot of steps, gives you a flavor that it's not an easy climb. This is part of my group. Now, this is Namche Bazaar. It gives you a sense as to, this is the biggest village on that track. And people who go to Everest Base Camp, okay, sometimes they forget stuff. In that little village, you can find anything for hiking, all kinds of stuff. Now from Big Boche, when we went to a local peak, that's the picture we took when we got to the local peak. This is a group of 7 right there. Now from that peak, I took some pictures around, and you can see one of those pictures. And I did point out in that map that as you go up, you see different peaks of Himalayan range. It's another picture of the river. Now in Big Boche, when I got up in the morning, there was snow, 2 inches of snow during the night. And it was just gorgeous. So I took some pictures of the mountains around me with a couple of inches of snow. Now, in an hour or so, the sun came up and all the snow was gone. But during that 1 hour, oh, it was tremendous. Here's another picture. Another one. Same village, another one. Now we have left it, and now we are going to our next stop. Now if you look to the bottom left corner, that's how the houses are made. Or, it's not really a house. It's a cabin, quote unquote. And what they do is take rocks and they pile it on the top of each other without any cement or plaster in between. So you see that at the bottom left. Now I'm standing there next to Khumbu Glacier. If I move back by 8 feet, I'll land right into the glacier, which you never want to do. And the reason for that is, when you land on a glacier, you don't know what's underneath it. Actually, some of the depths, when people climb to Everest Base Camp, is because they put a step where it should be. Because it looks, it's just like sometimes in Minnesota, the lake looks fine, but it's very thin ice, and the moment you put your weight on it, you go through. So 8 feet behind me is Khumbu Glacier. Another picture, right that spot. Now we are at Everest Base Camp. Okay, Everest is right on your left with clouds, puff of clouds. It sits in the back. And some of these folks are just taking a look at taking pictures. Another picture, Everest in the back. Another picture of the mountain peak. Now that's a group picture at Everest Base Camp. We have a guide and a Sherpa and 7 of us. So there are 9 people in that picture. Now let me show you in just a moment. This is where Everest is, right there. It sits in the back. Now we came from Everest Base Camp to workshop, slept there at night, and in the morning, 4 o'clock, with headlamps, went to Kalapathar. I didn't want to take my hand out of my glove because it's cold and windy, and in the morning, So I didn't take any pictures. So the picture we took was when the sun came out. This is the first picture. Now in this picture you see the women were not with us. Okay, I think they were the wiser ones. They told us, you guys are crazy, we are not going, we had enough of this, you go by yourself. So it's all the guys on that picture, all 5 of us. Now you can tell from our faces, we were all cold. Now we are heading back. At 12,500, there is a Buddhist monastery, and I'm told that the highest monastery in the world is at that. Okay, and I'll show you some pictures of it. This is the gate to the monastery. When you go inside, there is a statue of Buddha. It must be 25 feet high. They don't let you take any pictures. Now, since they didn't let me take any pictures inside the temple, I stood outside and took pictures. And it's around mountains, snow-covered peaks. It's just gorgeous. Now we are back to Lukla Airport. Funny thing about Lukla Airport, the airport strip is only maybe a couple of 100 yards. It goes down 60 feet, and then there's a lip. The reason is that when the plane is trying to take off, it will gather speed, and the little lip will kick it off. And if you don't make that, below that was 500 feet of forest. And there's the remains of a plane you can see from there, which didn't make it. So these are some pictures from the Lukla Airport. So what I've shared with you is my attempt to be happy, wealthy, and healthy through exercise and having a goal of making to Everest Base Camp for that exercise. And I'll ask you that you choose your own goal, because everybody cannot do what I did, but everybody can do something better than what they're doing, and it will help you with your health. And if you have a good health, it will save some money for you, because there are some physicians in the crowd, they know that. And also, physical activity helps you with your happiness. Sure. So choose your own goal and go for it, and make happiness a habit. Thank you. Now I'll ask you some questions.
You were fed all the way, you didn't have to carry food. Is that right?
No, we didn't have to, I didn't have to, nobody carries food. Tradition in Nepal is you have a Sherpa. Sherpas don't carry food either. That's one advantage of going in Nepal. Because all these places I mentioned, Namche Bazaar, Lobulche, they have food for you, so you don't have to carry food. But you do have to carry water. Okay? And you do have to carry your own sleeping bag. Okay. Well,
I was wondering, you kept saying you went to a place and then you come back down. Is that to acclimate yourself to the
Yes.
elevation?
yes.
Okay.
That's very traditional. Okay, people who go to Mount Everest peak, they do the same thing too. That's why they have more than one base camp. Okay, depending on the expedition, you may have 3 or 4 base camps. So what they do is, you go to a base camp, you go up, instead of staying there, you come down, so you can get acclimated to thin air.
What is altitude sickness and how you prepare yourself to counter that?
Well, you don't. Okay, unless you go to Colorado and do a lot of training there, which I did do. Okay. Only one thing you do is, there's a pill named Diamox. It helps you breathe with your back. Okay. Tell you a funny story. When I was packing my bag, and they don't allow you more than 10 kilos, by the way, which is about 22 pounds on the airplane. I had Diamox. I had a prescription for it. And I put it somewhere in my duffel bag. When I needed it, I couldn't find it. So I asked one of my group mates if they had Diamox. Oh, sure, I had 100 pills. I said, could you give me one? So I got one Diamox. I took it. Now guess what? Being a dumb person, I didn't ask what are the side effects. Okay, number one. Number two, the dosage was 2 times the dosage that my physician gave me. So 7 o'clock, I take this Dimax, and my tingling in my feet and my fingers all night, 2 or 3 in the morning. And I thought I had it, okay? Because when you're scared to begin with, something unusual happens. I said, I'm not going anyplace. I'm going to tell in the morning, guys, I can't do it. This is not for me. Luckily for me, at 3 a.m. in the morning, I was able to sleep. The tingling went away. And in the morning, when I asked the group, I said, hey, I had a lot of tingling. And I said, you dumb. You're supposed to know that. We all got that. Okay? So, but the Dimax helps you breathe at higher elevation. But it has side effects. What's the question?
Tell me about your hiking boots. Were they leather, synthetic, a combination of both? How well did they work? Did you make a bad decision in buying them, or could you buy them, when you were in Kathmandu or on site?
You can buy shoes in Kathmandu, but I would not advise for you to do that. The reason for that is when you're hiking and there's nothing else there, if you have a shoe problem, you're done. And you want to wear those shoes so you know that they won't give you blisters. Okay? And hiking boots are highly recommended. Sneakers won't work. The reason for that is you're walking on rocks. And when you're walking on rocks with sneakers, your feet will know the difference. With the hiking boots, because it's a solid sole underneath your feet, you can do it.
Is it true most people die on the way down? And how many people have died since Tenzing?
I'm sorry, you got to speak a little louder. I'm a little hard of
Is
hearing.
it true that most people die on the way down from the mountain? And then how many people have died since Tenzing?
I can't tell you that because I didn't go to the peak. I went to the first base camp. Okay. If you go with a good group, the completion rate is more than 95%.
I just heard an interview on TV, and they said there's approximately 300 bodies above that the camp that you went to. They don't. Sometimes families pay people to bring the bodies down, but it costs around $15,000 or $18,000 to get a body down, and so they usually just pile rocks over them, and they stay there for years because they're ice.
That's true. That is if you can retrieve the body, because sometimes they fall into a crevice. And you can't retrieve it. A good portion of the death, see, I didn't experience it, none of that happens to where I went. It's all above that. A good number of people die because they make mistakes. Okay? Now I'll tell you a funny story, then I'll take your question. When I was hiking, my guide told me that he likes old people. That's a weird thing, you know. Generally he said, I don't like old people. I said, how come you like old people? He said, this is what happens. The young people, they're all full of piss and vinegar, pardon the language. They just go gangbusters when they start. And then all of a sudden, the light goes out. He said, old people, they take it easy, and don't have to push too hard, and they make it. So percentage of people who make to the base camp, old people is a lot higher than the young people. And that was surprising. Yes.
What happens to the garbage?
See, quote unquote, we don't have the garbage. The reason for that is you're staying in a sort of motel type arrangement where the food is given to you. The only garbage potentially you could have would be your empty bottle, because you're taking a bottled water. And if you make sure that when you empty a bottle, put it in your sleeping bag, put it in your backpack, and then drop it. The garbage becomes a problem when you go above that, because there is no motel or anything which is a constructed roof on the top of it. You stay in a camp. Now lately, I don't know for sure, but I have read that government of Nepal, when you go up above where I went, okay, they weigh all your carrying, and they expect you to bring 10% more. And if you don't, you get fined. And 10% more is what people have been doing it for 10 years, they leave it. Okay, and all that gets charged to whoever is hiring these people to take that. Now, make a guess how much it costs per person to go to Everest Peak. I didn't do that. Okay, I went to first base camp. But if you decide to go to Everest Peak, how much would it cost you? Anybody guess?
22,000.
Yes, you're right on money.
What was it?
$100,000. Okay? So I have a saying in my business, if you're young, you're good looking, and you got lots of money, you can do anything you want. Including going to Everest Peak.
You had a short discussion on glaciers and whatever. Is there any awareness in that area on global warming or the rivers coming down or kind of a global perspective on some of the climate change that's happening?
Jim, I'm surprised you say that, because I was surprised myself. When we went to Kathmandu the very first day, you have an impression going to Kathmandu, it's in the mountains, you know, and Everest Peak, that the air would be pristine, it would be really nice. It was worse than Duluth. Okay. The traffic was so much that to cross the road, you're taking your life in your own hands, because there were lights. Okay. 50 years ago, you could see a policeman giving the signals, okay, and people just one after another. All kinds. Motor scooters, cars, rickshaws. So, yes, there is an awareness. But awareness by itself is just like a library. Okay? It's a lot of knowledge, but unless you do something about it, it doesn't change anything. Okay? The only awareness I saw was, I didn't see a lot of trash to the first base camp. None. Okay? And one Australian, actually, I commended him, I paid him a compliment. He had a little bag, and he was picking trash on his way to the camp. And he was from Australia. Yes?
Vinod, there's been some devastating earthquakes in Nepal, and some of your pictures suggest that the buildings would be very vulnerable. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, where I went, there was no impact of earthquake. Okay? And some of those buildings are made with aluminum and rocks. But the part of Nepal where there was a quake was a different part, and we didn't see it.
I know that you did not go all the way to the summit, but when people do summit it, do they climb absolutely to the pinnacle so you can't go any farther? Because it looks like there could be snow cornices and you could just step through and you're gone. Do you know how far is...
Well, see, Everest Peak is the highest peak in that region, okay? And if you have a goal to climb that, once you're done, then you say, hey, I'm done. But, excuse me. But anybody who has done mountain climbing, when you go up, there's another peak behind it. So when you go up, you go down, you can go on forever. But to most people, it's dangerous. When we went to Everest Base Camp, people said, how many days you stay there? How about 40 minutes? You go there, you take a few pictures so you can show it to nice folks like you, and you head down. And people do the same thing when they go to Everest Peak. They stand there, put a flag on the top, take a few pictures to make sure people know they made it, and they head down.
What kind of a camera did you use?
Oh, this point and shoot camera. You don't want to carry any weight. But the guy from New Zealand, he had a good camera, you know. But I didn't want to carry another 3 pounds.
Your broader point about using exercise to increase happiness, that's pretty well scientifically proven, I understand. And it seems to be one of your motivations to keep finding places to hike and keep active. And I would just, in a personal note, I would just like to thank you for that, putting it in that context. I think that's the great context there. A lot of people exercise, they do something, they accomplishment, they accomplish it, and then they sit around for the rest of their life, like the star athlete in college, and you meet him 20 years later, he's not in very good shape, he's
Yeah, you're right, Bill.
already had an angiography or something.
See, at this stage in my life, I believe that to be healthy, wealthy, and happy, there are many, many things you can do, okay? And all of you are very wise people, you know that. But to me, there are three top things. Number one is exercise, okay? You've got to move your body. Okay? You may not want to do what I did, but you've got to do something, whatever is your cup of tea. Second thing you got to do is learn how to relax. In this day and age, and with our lifestyle, if you want to be happy and healthy ties directly into being wealthy. You've got to learn how to relax. And third thing is, you've got to eat good food. I read a lot of books on food. I'll give you one example. You know, in our country, we've been eating meat and potatoes since whenever. And somebody asked me, he said, what's the damn difference now? I said, the difference is, when you grew your own cow and you slaughtered it and you had meat on your table, you know what you fed that cow. These days, they give you growth hormones to the beef. And it is not the cow, that's the problem, it is the growth hormones. So when you're eating something which has growth hormones in it, okay, or antibiotics to chicken, guess what it does to your body? One of the reasons you get cancer is because those cells are growing because of growth hormones unchecked. So what you eat makes a difference. And same thing with milk. They are giving growth hormones to cows. And that's why young girls have bigger breasts these days than they used to because of the growth hormones in milk. But I'm not a guru at this, I just know things. So third thing I would say is you've got to be careful as what you eat.
How about thinking healthily?
See, there are other dozen things you can do. I just gave you top 3 in my book. The answer is yes. What you put in your brain has a huge impact. But I didn't want to give you a laundry list.
There's the old Monty Python movie where they sing, always think on the bright side of life. Remember that? Yeah. I try to put that in my head a couple times a week so I get back on track a little bit. That's, it's easier than hiking up mountains. But
of course, that song is all about, like, dying.
Yeah, I know. Better to learn the song than see the film.
Was there ever a time on your hike that you felt you weren't going to make it, or were you healthy the whole time?
Very good question. First day when I was there, and I took the Dimax, which was 2 times more potent, and I had tingling, and I didn't know why, because I was dumb enough not to believe the side effects. I couldn't sleep. I was in bed by 8 o'clock and up to 3, and 95% I was certain that that was it. Okay, it's just not a game for people at my age. Okay, so there was another thing too, and you make mistakes and you learn from it. What's the time difference between Minnesota and Kathmandu? Anybody wants to take a guess?
11 hours?
Time difference between Minnesota or Duluth and Kathmandu? 11 hours.
11 hours, I was going to say just about almost.
So I got there the day before, couldn't sleep, and we were supposed to leave 4 o'clock in the morning to catch our plane. Next day was the side effects of not sleeping enough, in addition to taking that much. That was the hardest day. After 3 days, when I didn't see any side effects of climbing, that means my body was okay. I didn't have any soft issues. I knew I'm going to make it. Okay, I was that certain. Because you climb for 6-7 hours, you're doing about 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet, and you come back, you're tired, but you're not hurting. That's the key. The recovery was there, so I know I'm going to make it. There's no problem. But first couple of days were hard. Yes, sir.
What's next for you?
I don't know. I don't know. There is no quote-unquote A plan. Only next one is Patagonia in January. That's in Chile. Yeah. And in September, that's not a climbing thing. But there is a route in Europe for Christians. And that was, what, 600 miles from Portugal to Italy? I'm going to do one piece of it, which is 100 miles from France to Spain. Okay, 100 miles takes about 6-7 days. We do about 15 miles every day. But it's not a done deal until you put the money down. It's just a dream.